Warning: the following contains depictions and discussion of suicide and self-harm. Also, there's a spider. Watch or listen to it anyway, it's good for you. Promise. If you have been on the internet at all during the last, say, 5 years, you've likely heard someone talk about triggers. The phrase tinted either with sarcastic contempt or a clear sense of fragility, like even the mildest breeze would cause the speaker to break into a stream of panicked tears. But what exactly is this mystical thing that's got everyone so hot and bothered? I'm Snowball, and today's Snowball effect is on the topic of triggers and why not to avoid them. A trigger refers to a significant reaction after input, most commonly visual or auditory, has caused an individual to experience a kind of flashback, putting them into a state of mental or physical anguish. A visual example might help here. Imagine an arachnophobe waking up with one of these on their pillow. In this case, the cuddly little fella right here would be the trigger, and the poor arachnophobe will be experiencing a nice bit of emotion right about now. He might, at a later point, be struck with regret over moving to the perpetual spider convention we call Australia. But the initial shock is likely to cause more of a primal reaction, namely, fight, flight, or quickly cocooning inside a blanket, reconnecting with Jesus and praying that this fuzzy little friend will be inclined to go torture some other poor creature. The latter option was a favorite among Neanderthals, bringing them much evolutionary and financial success. Now, for those unfamiliar with my personal life story, that is, everyone who hasn't seen me drunk, I have an arm and a leg that indicate that teenage Snowball was making a very misguided attempt to transition into a zebra. Of course, self-harm is a serious topic and people are exhaustingly serious about it as a consequence. Joking about it tends to make it less of an overwhelming presence, as well as being good fun for all the family. When occasionally asked by children how my arm got so messed up, my go-to answer is that I fought a raccoon but emerged victorious after a long battle, after which I'll explain the actual reason for my rather striped appearance. It lightens the mood a bit, providing a funny mental image to lessen the impact of having to explain why I decided to treat my arm like an Asian chef treats shrimp on a grill. Back on topic, a trigger is likely to be found in an expected habitat. If you struggle with suicidal thoughts, self-harm, or similar, you might be inclined to avoid media that commonly depicts these. Anxiety attacks are, after all, like Beyoncé, overrated and requiring conscious effort to avoid. However, triggers do occasionally pop up in places where you do not expect them. And when your cutesy anime dating sim, which has repeated content warnings at the start of the game, but let's just ignore those, suddenly includes jarring depictions of suicide and self-harm, this can be more than a little unsettling. That's right, folks, we're talking Doki Doki Literature Club. Doki Doki Literature Club is a name so cutesy that just saying it is likely to dangerously elevate one's blood sugar levels. In fact, just saying it twice has thrown me off my diet and caused my foot to be retroactively amputated due to complications from diabetes type kawaii. The initial tone of the game perfectly matches the name. Anyone familiar with the basic tropes of anime will feel right at home with the cutesy mood, archetypes, and the setting. You get to romantically pursue one of the 3 girls. Natsuki, the little grump of the year who would never think of doing anything nice for you or anything. Sayori, aka anime childhood friend TM. Or Yuri, the slightly aloof and edgy goth girl who obviously has some stuff going on. This might prove a difficult choice for some, but as I am blessed with the natural power of exclusively attracting girls with dad issues from here to the surface of Jupiter, I decide to go for the goth chick. The game features some lovely poetry written by the characters. Each girl describes the state of her being through these poems, and the observant player might notice that while everything starts off in a perfectly normal manner, things start escalating. Take for instance Yuri's The Raccoon, or Sayori's Bottles, both of which I will be reading now. The Raccoon. It happened in the dead of night while I was slicing bread for a guilty snack. My attention was caught by the scuttering of a raccoon outside my window. That was, I believe, the first time I noticed my strange tendencies as an ordinary human. I gave the raccoon a piece of bread, my subconscious well aware of the consequences, well aware that a raccoon that is fed will always come back for more. The enticing beauty of my cutting knife was a symptom. The bread, my hungry curiosity. The raccoon, an urge. The moon increments its phase and reflects that much more light off of my cutting knife. The very same light that glistens in the eyes of my raccoon friend. I slice the bread, fresh and soft. The raccoon becomes excited. Or perhaps I'm merely projecting my emotions onto the newly satisfied animal. The raccoon has taken to following me. You could say that we've gotten quite used to each other. The raccoon becomes hungry more and more frequently, so my bread is always handy. Every time I brandish my cutting knife, the raccoon shows me its excitement. A rush of blood, classic Pavlovian conditioning. I slice the bread, and I feed myself again. Bottles. I pop off my scalp like the lid of a cookie jar. It's a secret place where I keep all my dreams. Little balls of sunshine all rubbing together like a bundle of kittens. I reach inside with my thumb and forefinger and pluck one out. It's warm and tingly, but there's no time to waste. I put it in a bottle to keep it safe, and I put the bottle on the shelf with all of the other bottles. Happy thoughts, happy thoughts, happy thoughts and bottles all in a row. My collection makes me lots of friends. Each bottle a starlight to make amends. Sometimes my friend feels a certain way, down comes a bottle to save the day. Night after night, more dreams. Friend after friend, more bottles. Deeper and deeper my fingers go, like exploring a dark cave, discovering the secrets hiding in the nooks and crannies. Digging and digging, scraping and scraping. I blow dust off my bottle caps. It doesn't feel like time elapsed. My empty shelf could use some more. My friends look through my locked front door. Finally, all done. I open up and in come my friends. In they come in such a hurry. Do they want my bottles that much? I frantically pull them from the shelf, one after the other, holding them out to each and every friend, each and every bottle. But every time I let one go, it shatters against the tile between my feet. Happy thoughts, happy thoughts, happy thoughts in shards, all over the floor. They were supposed to be for my friends who aren't smiling. They're all shouting, pleading something. But all I hear is echo, 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 echo inside my head. There is a vague darkness permeating these two poems, the extent of their meaning not readily apparent quite yet. You might want to keep their content in mind as we proceed. I'd place the story's turning point around the time Sayori admits to you that she's been struggling with depression her whole life. The protagonist does his best to comfort her, and admittedly makes a sincere effort of it. Seems like you cheered her up. Later that day, spoilers occur. Sayori seems really upset. Hopefully you can make it all up to her tomorrow. You go to school the next day, discovering that Sayori hasn't gotten there yet. You assume she's overslept or something, but you're worried enough to go to her house and check up on her. Nobody answers the door. The soundtrack has gone completely quiet, and you make your way through the house, up the stairs, finally knocking on her bedroom door. She doesn't answer. Better go in. See, this is shocking for many different reasons, not least of which is the foreshadowing, combined with its sudden nature and niggling thought that something might actually have been wrong before you got there. When you make it to her house, the quiet build-up and lack of background music emphasize the underlying dread of the situation. As you slowly make your way through her house, you might think about how this is somewhere the protagonist is familiar. His thoughts are fairly positive, and the player might even be calmed down a bit by him thinking that waking her up in her room is something a boyfriend might do. Opening the door, the sudden close-up of Sayori's dead body, the soundtrack returns, but it's distorted. The situation is wrong. Things were not supposed to be like this. Sayori seemed like a ray of sunshine, but like her poem indicated, she used up all her light on other people, leaving only the void for herself. The game resets to the first day, with Sayori noticeably absent. In fact, she's been completely erased from your memory. Needless to say, something was a little bit funky about this anime dating sim, but perhaps it could be blamed on a sudden burst of existential despair on the part of the creator. I decided to keep on going. Might as well keep pursuing the dark, brooding girl and see what lovely hijinks we can get up to in this once more completely normal game about dating cute anime girls. Everything really seems back to normal, but the situations you've already experienced change in small ways. A few graphical glitches occur here and there, but that's probably nothing serious. Yuri and Natsuki have a fight that gets pretty ugly due to a disappointing lack of a man telling them to hide their womanly emotions. You eventually get to the point of preparing for the school festival. I choose to help Yuri out with her preparations because, duh. Yuri comes over to your house, you talk for a bit, and she starts fixating on a knife. At one point you leave the room and return, seeing her quickly rolling down her sleeve, almost as if covering something up. Luckily, she just acts a teensy bit weird and eventually returns home without anything bad happening. Man, lucky for me this game doesn't have a history of becoming incredibly messed up, or my Snowball sense would be tingling right now. A day later, you return to the club. You're supposed to read a book with Yuri, and she goes to make tea. She's gone for a bit longer than expected though, so you better look for her. You follow into the hallway. Your proficiency at boiling water is obviously required here, as the task has proven too much for her. Besides, it's probably wise to keep an eye out in case there's something wrong. Don't want her ending up like, I feel like something just slipped my mind. Anyway, tragic events can and must be avoided. Suddenly, you hear sounds, and I start feeling like something is definitely about to get a wee bit fucky here. Subtle hints like her fixating on knives and Little Grump explicitly stating that she's a cutter have tipped me off. You call her name and find her at last. Due to my personal experience with cutting, this was a scene that legitimately caused me to have a bit of a breakdown. I recognized the combination of shame, despair, and pouring blood all too well. I had trouble breathing, I was shaking, and I felt completely numb except for a tightness in my chest. I stared at the scene displayed in front of me for about 15 minutes, unable to proceed and reliving some of the shittiest parts of my teenage years. Sometimes, all it takes for your walls to come crumbling down is a prod in the right piece of structural damage. After I recovered sufficiently to click the mouse again, the thought occupying my head was, fuck, am I glad I'm home alone right now. See, the rest of the game has its disturbing elements, but this specific scene resonated with me in some kind of way. It brought back memories that I'd rather not relive, and made me lose control for just a short while. At the same time, I was having an adrenaline rush that I hadn't experienced in years, and looking back, I feel like it was an important experience to have. It was perceived danger without any of the actual risk. Of course, in the moment it didn't feel anything close to good, but it had value that was not immediately apparent. Later occurrences in life have subjected me to similar emotions, and with every mention, discussion, and experience, it gets easier to process. Silent contemplation and a few internal discussions following a trigger might aid in coming to terms with your own harmful actions and experiences. This can be immensely powerful. Of course, that is not to say you should seek out the most visceral or upsetting form of whatever triggers you right now, but kudos on being proactive. Maybe try reading a text featuring whatever you experienced, or possibly even take in content discussing your particular trigger. Mental strength does, frankly, have much in common with its physical equivalent. Take your time, start off slow, and build up to the more difficult challenges so you don't mess yourself up. One day, if someone asks you to lift a fridge up to the 9th floor for them, as happens often in adult life, you'll be up to the task. Exemplifying this, I replayed the game in order to record the relevant video. Sure, the upsetting imagery was still upsetting, but nothing I couldn't handle. Then, I reached the scene. I walked out into the hallway. My heart started pounding as I wondered how I'd react this time around. Yuri appears and I'm fine. Seeing it still brought me back, but now I was reviewing a memory instead of being trapped in it. It almost felt normal. I've seen my own scars every day for the last 7 years. I've experienced a few other situations that hit way too close to home, in the same way that this game did. But every time, it became a little bit easier. It forced me to face my shadow, so to speak, and become more of a functioning person. These days, you'll see a lot of requests for trigger warnings. Doki Doki Literature Club has a few. I even included one in this video. It's easier to face something you're prepared for, and I didn't want to spring upsetting imagery on anyone in the safety of their own home without preparing them first. But to reiterate a commonly mentioned point, the real world doesn't have trigger warnings. Exposing yourself to the things you're afraid of in a safe environment, discussing your experience, and engaging in introspection are hugely beneficial in handling real-world situations that you would otherwise have been woefully unprepared for. It's not easy. It sucks while you're doing it, and you're likely to feel overwhelmed sometimes during the process. But the feeling of having conquered a seemingly insurmountable challenge makes it all worth it. I sincerely want that for anyone who has been through anything close to what I have. Important thing is, I never would have gotten over it if I hadn't confronted it first. No problem outside of how to prepare a shark for an Icelandic dish is solved by burying it. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, or at least that you got something out of watching it. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, clicking the bell, and maybe even leaving a comment if you're gonna go crazy with it. Until next time, bye!